So welcome everybody. I appreciate your presence, and we're here today to talk about planning 3 bright spots in your day and to build a positive mindset. This is our fourth and final webinar that's part of the 10 days of gratitude. The other days we do have wellness tip challenge sheets, and for each of the webinars we are posting the slides and the recording link. So if you want to go back and look at either of those, they are on Thrive. So if you go to Thrive and then go to live and recorded resources, you'll see that all listed there. My name is Bud Wassell, and I'm coordinator of our Employee and Family Resources program, along with my colleague Vivian Burgle. She's not here today, but she's done a couple of the other webinars, which you might have tuned into. She did yesterday self-compassion, and then Monday she did one on cultivating positive feelings and coping with negative ones. Those also have been recorded and are on that Thrive site, so if you wanted to go see those. So I'm going to cover a lot today, so but just a quick reminder about our EFR services. The main toll-free number is there. Those are the services that you see listed, which are all actually delivered by an outside company. So I point that out. It was called Beacon Health Options. Now they changed their name. It's called Carillon Behavioral Health. And they are a separate company. They're not part of our YNHHS system. And so their records are completely separate. So if you wanted to use the counseling, for example, all of what you talked about and connecting with the counselor, totally private and confidential. Nothing comes back to us. We don't get any names. We don't get any information. They have to, of course, abide by all the HIPAA laws and requirements as well. So keep that in mind. It's there for you. It's also there for your family members, your immediate dependents, and also household members, meaning anyone who lives with you can also call and use the services. There is a web portal here, My Beacon Wellbeing, that you see there. That is to schedule online appointments. You can do that very easily. Or if you want to schedule in-person in the community, call up that 877 number. There's another website which we have a lot of content on. That's the Achieve Solutions site. So that's something else to check out. If you ever have any questions about the services, as I move on to the LifeCycle Kits, just feel free to reach out to me or Vivian on the email. We're happy to help just get you connected, or if there's any roadblocks, there shouldn't be, but sometimes there are, we're happy to help in any way. So these kits that you see listed here are free, and you have to call to get one if you want one. It's one per employee. So feel free to give a call. And as you can see, all different life stages and different events that we go through. And just to give you an idea, I've highlighted a couple of kits. The stress management kit has a couple of nice books, an audio CD, and an adult coloring book. And the caregiver support kit has also a couple of good books, and then a medical ID alert magnet, jar gripper, and pill organizer. So those are free. You just got to give the program a call. They'll do a quick consult with you because they want to see if there's other ways that they can help. If there are any issues that they can help find resources for or connect you with counseling. So those are the kits. Feel free to call if you'd like one of those. So today we're talking about planning 3 bright spots. So the whole idea is to kind of help overcome all of this that we experience, and I kind of don't want to depress you, but if you just kind of look through that list, and I probably forgot a few things that are in our environment out there, things that really are quite overwhelming, depressing even, bring up a whole range of emotions for us. So we're kind of swimming against the tide, and we all feel it. We've all been through couple of very difficult years, and we've all had to make a lot of adjustments, deal with a lot of uncertainty and change. And so all these other things that you see listed here contribute to that overall mood. So I point that out to say, we can begin to be proactive. And planning 3 bright spots is one small way that we can begin to build that positive mindset. But we have to do this intentionally. We have to do this deliberately. We have to really plan. And so that's kind of the focus of today's session. But, over the course of a typical workday, there's all sorts of negative and positive things that are going to happen to us, correct? We tend to, if you're like most people, focus mainly on the negative ones. And those are the ones that we tend to ruminate over, but also talk to our friends and our family about. It's kind of a natural way to kind of offload that. And I'm not saying to not do that, but I guess what I'm saying is to not do that all the time. So if it's helpful to do that, fine, go ahead and talk about it, share it, offload it as best you can. But today's session is about balancing the negative with the positive. So on this next slide, which if you've been in my sessions before, I show this a lot, but the idea of this is that when we're on autopilot, we're a lot like the man here on the walk. We are naturally kind of tuning into the things that are troubling us. And our minds get quite cluttered and sometimes even burdened by the stresses and strains. In fact, they've done studies to show that when our minds just simply wander, if in other words, you just let your mind go off on its own, we tend to, first of all, not be focused on the present moment, but secondly, also be focused on things that are going wrong. So part of today's lesson is to learn to counteract that, to sort of be like the dog in this cartoon. Dogs don't have all that, clutter in their minds, and they can appreciate the present moment. And that's kind of what we're getting to, is we're not letting those things cloud our minds. We're not doing what Mark Twain said. My life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. We do have a tendency, because of the negativity bias, and I'll explain that, to focus on the negative. It's just the way our minds are hardwired. And so we tend to focus and project things that haven't even happened, the what ifs, the kinds of things that we're worried about. If you come across, a small example like, maybe a medical symptom or something small, but it's easy to catastrophize that and think that the worst is going to happen, especially with that backdrop of everything that I pointed out before and the negativity bias that we all have internally. It's easy to do that. And so this is kind of the result. We can feel very, very burdened and overwhelmed, and things pile up. And so when this happens, we really begin to feel the negativity. So what I've mentioned this a couple times, the negativity bias is this tendency that our brains have to focus on the negative. As it says here, negative experiences stick to the brain like Velcro. Positive experiences slide off the brain like Teflon. So just recognizing this, that we can begin to learn to turn that around. But it takes some effort and it takes some intention. The good news is that second point there, if you've heard of this term neuroplasticity, neurons that fire together wire together. So in other words, the more focus and attention you put on something, the more it actually grows that area of the brain. So if you focus on the negative, you're going to create and strengthen those neural pathways. If you focus on more positive, pleasant events, bright spots, you're going to begin to build those pathways and strengthen and reinforce those, so that a passing mental state becomes a neural mental trait. And what that simply means is that it begins to be more conditioned and habituated. And so we can learn to create more focus and build that positive mindset that I've been talking about. Even optimism and pessimism, that whole spectrum, they've done some studies on this, that you can learn to be more optimistic. There's a whole book that was written about this by Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, that we can learn to be more optimistic in a realistic way, not just blindly, but in a realistic way. Along with that, there's been a number of studies done on that we can learn to change how we relate to stress. Stress, we've been taught that stress is bad for us. We've been taught that it is harmful to our health, right? But what they found out is that the more we believe that, and the more we feed into that belief and that mindset, the more that in fact it will have a negative impact on not just our emotional well-being, but on our physical well-being. So there's a couple of links here, and I would encourage you, when you take a look at the slides, when I post them, you might want to watch. These are relatively quick TED Talks or videos. In the first one there, Kelly McGonigal talks about how our beliefs really do affect how we process and perceive stress, and that we can really take control of that. So I'm not going to go into that now, but the idea is that we do have the power to kind of shift and change how we believe about all those things I've talked about. Not only the big things, but the little things that are annoying, the little things that trouble us, the things that clutter our minds. We can begin to take a more realistic but positive attitude about that. And planning the 3 bright spots is all about that. So the first thing to do, because you might be thinking, well, how do we do this? Well, pausing. Again, I've talked about this in a lot of other classes, but pausing is very powerful. So we get very wrapped up into the things that we're doing, very focused, but also very tense. So taking these pauses to disengage from the work that we're doing, to begin to focus on the positive. And that's how we can begin to do this. When we look at this acronym, we pause in each one. P is pausing for presence. So presence is very important to bring us to the here and now. A is to acknowledge, allow, and accept even the negative things. So I'm not saying to deny them. In fact, I'm actually saying to acknowledge them, but allow them to be there, so that we can learn to accept them. The U is gaining some understanding about ourselves and what we need. S is support. We did a whole tip sheet on this. So this was actually number, let's see, you'll see it on that Thrive site. Just to point out a couple of things. The second day, give yourself a break, has a whole bunch of suggestions for that. The 6th day has a tip sheet on connect with and support others, and that has a number of ideas and links about that. And then tomorrow, the tip sheet is on the upside of stress. So if you want to learn more about that and read more about that, check those tip sheets out on the Thrive site. And then the E of pause is to examine our expectations, to examine what we need, to explore having fun. And that's kind of what this is about. So simple little things that you can try, all kinds of breathing. There's just paying attention to the breath, whether it's deep breathing or cyclic sighing breathing or box breathing. There's a number of different ways to do this. I'll demonstrate one when we do it. We're going to do an exercise in a couple of minutes. Savoring is so important, savoring the pleasant, and that's kind of what today is all about. Taking some time to let pleasant moments, pleasant events, things that we do that make us smile, let ourselves marinate in that a little bit. Everyday mindful awareness is a great way to bring ourselves into the present moment. And then the last thing there, all sorts of things that you already do that bring us joy. And I'm going to ask you to reflect on this. So even thinking now, what things bring you joy? What hobbies, what people, what activities? Maybe there's pets you have, maybe there's different things. Exercise, for example, can really help us overcome. It's even been shown to be a good antidote to depression. So here are some just examples, and what I want you to think about is planning or putting into your day 3 spots, all right? Not just 1, but 3. You got to put them in. I know we all have busy days, but put them in to do some of these things. And I want you to be thinking, and then we're going to reflect on that a little bit so that you come out of today's session with a few things that you can do on a regular basis. And making it a routine, a regular habit, is going to shift that whole mindset and is going to create some more of those positive neural pathways. Here are some quick gratitude pauses. Again, breathing deep, appreciating being alive, scanning the body, what's good about our bodies, savoring, there's the savor again, creating a gratitude photo album on your phone. And then who are you grateful to and why? This is kind of a big focus on the whole 10 days of gratitude. Hopefully you've been thinking about and maybe setting up some ways to create a gratitude practice. We did a whole session on that on the very first day, and there is a recording if you want to dig a little deeper into that. Here's just a couple more pauses just to give you some more examples. The last one I'll just describe a little bit is we use our imagination to kind of take a mental break. So we think of a nice, peaceful, pleasant place. So that's one bright spot that you could do. What's a place that you go to that you really enjoy, that gives you either a sense of peace and tranquility or a sense of fun? And you can take a break. It's one of the bright spots, maybe, to visualize that place in your mind's eye, to use your imagination and go there and really sense, what does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? Using your senses and your imagination to put yourself in that place. Great example of a quick bright spot that you can do that in 2 or 3 minutes. All right, so that's kind of putting ourselves in another place, but putting ourselves in the present. As you know, I'm a big proponent of mindful activities. I do think that learning mindful practices really help us not ruminate, help us come back to the present moment, so they're right here and now, so that we're interrupting that whole cycle of thinking about things that are worrying us. And so what I'd like to do is run you through a fairly quick mindfulness exercise, and maybe take about, let's do about maybe 5 minutes. So I'm going to do it relatively quick. So just sit comfortably, close your eyes if it's okay. If you'd like to close them, if you would rather keep them open, you can, but I would suggest keeping your eyes soft and down with a unfocused gaze. And the first thing we're going to do to just center our attention is to just feel our body in the chair. Just take a moment to sense into the feeling of your feet on the floor, your body in the chair. And then feel your body breathing, and maybe take a couple of nice deep breaths in and out. And what you could do, there's a couple of ways. So one is to let your out breath be longer than your in breath. That's the very simple way. But you might also try inhaling halfway and then fully and completely inhaling. Filling the lungs and then sighing it out. Do that a couple of times. In halfway, and then all the way, and then a long, slow sigh, emptying the lungs. Do that another time on your own. And you can even feel just a couple of times that sense of relaxation that can bring. So that's the first step, is beginning to relax ourselves so that we can just allow ourselves to be comfortable. Now, what I'd like you to do is to do a quick scan of the body, and there probably are still some spots where you notice a little bit of tension left over from today or last couple of days. We hold tension in specific areas, maybe your shoulders or your jaw. Just noticing where you are feeling a little bit of tension. So quickly scanning the body, being aware of that place where you're holding, contracting, feeling a little bit tight. And if you can notice that, feel free to let that go, let that be loose. That's sort of our baseline. Now, what I'd like you to do is bring to mind something pleasant. Could be anything, any small little thing. Okay, it doesn't have to be something big, but anything that is a bright spot in your life, something that you're grateful for, something, someone, even something as simple as being aware of something beautiful in nature, or somebody who did something kind for you or you did for them. A coworker who helped you out, supported you. Somebody who held the door for you when your hands were full. Anything. Just try to see if you can bring something to mind. And I just want you to focus on that for a few seconds. And just be aware of it. Notice what it was. Put yourself in that place. And just spend a little time with it, continuing to breathe nice and easily so that you keep a relaxed mind and body. And maybe even notice and allow yourself to smile a little bit. If it brings a smile to your lips, smile to your mind, in a sense, to your heart. You can even breathe into the heart area. That's one way to kind of continue that, feeling the breath going into the heart, nourishing you, sustaining you. So what we're doing is we're spending some time with this pleasant event, not just letting it slide away. It's kind of our natural tendency. Spending at least 20 to 30 seconds being aware of it, appreciating it, savoring it a bit. Now, just after doing this, just kind of noticing the body again, quickly scanning the body, see if that's made a difference. Sometimes it can. Sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, but sometimes it can really make a difference in letting the body feel that pleasant event, that bright spot. Feel how it can override some of the negative tension that accumulates. So before we close the exercise, just kind of noticing again what that has been like for you. There's no right or wrong here, just kind of being aware of how that was. Maybe taking another deep breath. And maybe grounding yourself in your body again, feeling your body being supported by the chair. And if your eyes were closed, you can open them up. So just a quick little exercise to focus on a positive moment and kind of being aware of what are the things that make you smile. Perhaps a few things came to mind. So if you have a piece of paper or you're sitting at a computer, jot a couple of things down if you'd like. What are a couple of things that came up for you that make you smile? A couple of things that you're really interested in. And I'll go to this page here just to give you a bunch of different ideas. And as you kind of look through those, just to give you some food for thought, maybe jotting a few things down that you might like to try as quick bright spots. As you can see, they're small, everyday kinds of things, but things that we tend to not do on a regular basis, especially not 3 things in one day. So what most people don't realize is that positive experiences, even small ones, provide us with really helpful and valuable resources that can be used to reduce stress, including physical symptoms, such as headaches and muscle tension, just like we tried in that exercise. They make it easier for you to detach from work at the end of the day, even during the day. And in the research, which is all about the study that talked about 3 good things, and we'll focus in on that in a couple of minutes before we close out, that it really helps us counteract that. Instead of ruminating about negative things, we try to savor and turn towards those things. Now, gratitude, as this quote shows, and we focused on gratitude, is very, very helpful. So using your gratitude practice may be one way to do this through the day, 3 bright spots. We know that there's a lot of gratitude, a lot of benefits to gratitude that you see listed here, and also just some prompts. But I want to make sure I get to the 3 good things practice to take with you. This is really something that you can try. They did this experiment at Harvard. And basically what they did was they asked people, and first they asked people who had slight depression, and that made a big difference. But then they asked people, just everyday people in the study, to spend 5 minutes or so at the end of the day and jot down large or small events that went well. Things that 3 good things, just jotting down 3 good things seems to help to jot it down. So either maybe text somebody or send yourself an email or something like that, and just jot down 3 good things. And it could be any little things like we've talked about. So what they found is that after 3 weeks, stress levels, mental and physical complaints declined by significant amounts. And the other interesting thing that they found is that when practiced, this carried over into the future. So, and it sort of compounds upon each other. So practicing it also brings us to a better mindset, which sets us up for better things, to be more aware of good things, and it sort of really builds upon each other. And that's kind of what Rick Hansen found, and this is another link you might want to look about. He's written a whole book on hardwiring happiness, and this TED Talk, he explains it very well, but so you might want to check that out. But basically, it's all about the idea of spending a little bit more time, and when we do that, it creates these new neural pathways and this hardwiring of focusing on positive things. Now, this might seem like a lot, so here's one simple way to kind of put it into practice, the SAP3. So the S is stop what you're doing, especially if you're feeling a little bit stressed or overwhelmed. Breathe deeply. A, ask yourself what you're feeling and thinking, even if it's something negative, just acknowledge it. P is to do something physical every day. We know that that helps. And then the 3 is to plan the 3 bright spots. So actually put them in your calendar. Do something, make yourself a commitment to do 3 things on a regular basis. See if you can build that habit. Now, I want to make you aware, we do have an upcoming workshop, Smilow Wellness Workshop. If you haven't heard about this, it's next Thursday, the 18th at 4 o'clock. There's a link here. So if you wanted to reach out to me, I'm happy to send you the link, but it will be in the slides if you want to check that out. So, and then finally, we do have other resources that you may be aware of, but all sorts of ways to build your practice, our phone meditations. But again, just take some baby steps, make some small steps towards doing this for yourself. And the idea here is that we can create these peaceful moments, even when our days are quite hectic and stressful. So that's it, folks. I know it's a lot of information, but I will put the slides up. It's 1 minute after 1, so went over, I apologize, but let me stop the recording. And I just do want to thank you very much for joining me